John Henry was a little baby sitting on his papa's knee, and he picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel, cried, a hammer's gonna be the death of me, Lord, Lord, hammer's gonna be.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name again is Mark DiCarlo, and one of our perennial guests is on John Kelly because I'm having a hard time getting guests on the weekends, and Mr. Kelly's very knowledgeable, and always great to have you on, John.
And usually available.
Right. So Blake Farenthold, the congressional representative in our area, resigned prior to his term expiring. Do you know why he did that?
No, it's really interesting because from every indication, he was trying to hang on to the end of his term so he could increase his pension, because he is eligible for a pension. So it was kind of surprising. He's resisted it so far, but his office didn't say whether he would pay back the $84,000 he owed taxpayers.
Well, you say that he owes the taxpayers $84,000, and when he had a sexual harassment charge by a young woman, it went to mediation, and there was a special fund set up, a congressional fund set up, and I don't know who paid. I guess it's taxpayer funded, right?
Oh, yes.
Taxpayer funded. And they settled it. It was mediated, and whoever the mediator was agreed to settle it for $84,000. And Blake said he had no basic. Mr. Farenthold said he had basically no right to really contest it. It was like an insurance company settling the case. They settled it for $84,000, and then he did say he was going to repay it, and hasn't repaid it to this day.
Right.
And we have no idea whether or not he's. You know, I made a joke before the show. We were talking about it, and I said, Blake should give everybody the finger and say, "I'm not going to pay it," because he's leaving.
Well, he might want to think about moving to Arizona if he does that.
Do you think is he one of those persons very integrated in the community that cares what everybody thinks?
I think his social status might be threatened if he doesn't repay it. I think, I don't think he's returning with he's kind of returning with a cloud over his head anyway. He's the disgraced former representative of.
I'm going to say something else we talked about briefly before the show.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't think those scandals were much, and then I thought that the remark that he made to that man who was getting married was more inappropriate than the actual sex scandals, because it's just not something that a man will usually say to another man getting married, right? Unless you were
yes, well, especially in front of a mixed crowd of staff members, which was the case.
He basically said, allegedly said, well, you get this sex act from your wife because that's the last one you'll ever get.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
You're right. Right.
He's getting married. He may want to have children with this woman. He's saying, talking like that.
And here's a young guy, embarrassed in front of all his friends, and
I don't know. But I kind of thought he didn't. Now, I have some experience in the media.
Yes. They also added though that he was that was a general attitude in the office. There's a lot of sex talk. He'd blow up at times. He'd kind of hound and berate junior staff. That was really inappropriate. And he admitted to that.
What's interesting is, I thought someone of his social. I never researched Mr. Farenthold, but I thought he was your basic American white collar, college educated pedigree. We're in, some of us, we came from uneducated backgrounds. Maybe our parents were blue collar workers, especially in different parts of the country, ethnic, and that's the way we talked.
Well,
and we were impatient, and we gel and whatever. Right. So when Mr. Farenthold's office was like that, I was a little bit surprised. I did, of course, maybe I'm just using stereotypes.
I think to a certain degree you are, Mark, because I was raised in a blue collar family. That was not the norm. In fact, there was a greater emphasis put on your behavior in your role in the community because you didn't have money. You know, so you had to be respected for who you were and what you were.
Okay, so
And I think the problem with people, a lot of people like Blake struggle because the consequences are removed from their actions as they're growing up,
that's an
and so
insight. That's an
so
insight.
they're very vulnerable to doing what they want and then
Because you
being
have power, money, or
surprised.
influence, so you do what you
Yes.
want to do. Well,
You know, I was told that Blake's allowance when he went to law school was $250,000 a year.
well, we don't know if that's true.
No, we don't, but it was by a pretty reliable source. I
Well,
will say that.
You know what I was telling my staff just this week, or somebody associated with the staff or something. I said, you know, we go to law school, and the better law schools, say the top half, they don't teach you how to manage a law office.
Oh no, not at all.
We don't know.
Right.
Oh, you know, you manage this person.
Yeah.
How many times do they come in late? How many times, you know, how many times that they
Right.
take absences? How direct to be?
They basically tell
We don't know.
they basically tell doctors go hire somebody to run your office.
Well, we're not that. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
can't do that unless you're real big. Unless you're real big, you can't
Right.
really be having an office manager. And
No,
paying
but
them.
right.
You pay the office manager
Right.
a lot of times. That's all you make.
Right, but an
You know?
individual physician or a little practice, they got to figure that out for themselves. You know, they're kind of like
Right.
you, and plus they have insurance to deal with.
Right. So
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses.
No,
for
I'm
Mr.
just saying,
Fairwell.
yeah.
And by the way, you know, it's kind of interesting. I had invited him on this show, this public access
Uh-huh.
show, the day before, or I think the day before he resigned, and I tried to be nice because I've asked him on
Right,
before.
right.
And I said, just talk about your political platform, what you wanted to pass, what you didn't get passed,
Right.
what you think about issues. I said, we're not going to talk about this $84,000 or your pajamas. Or, and I basically said that, and I never heard back. And he's still welcome to come on, as are many people
Right.
that they think they're being criticized, or you know, and they could respond and have their, you know, have their say.
The New York Times today actually in an article about Mr. Farenthal actually referred to without naming us, We the People newspaper, it said he was made notorious before because of the pajama pictures. So
I'm gonna say something that I never said on the air,
uh-huh.
and I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I was told that you lost a lot of sponsors through your repetition of that infamous photo
No, not at
of
all.
Blake.
I
No,
would-
that
no,
wasn't
no,
true.
Not at all.
And then you ran into financial problems after that. That's
Oh
not
no,
true. Oh,
no,
okay, that's
no.
interesting.
We never made any money. We were always the voice, you know, the opposition. So, I mean, the Port one time took out a half-page ad with me because they heard I was going to run a story on the Port, but a crazy salary structure they had and how overpaid people were over there. And I ran the story anyway, and so they never put another ad. But we didn't make that decisions about stories based on our advertisers. And of course,
It's hard to be.
and
it's hard-
this is too small a market, you know, to make it financially. If you're in Houston or Austin, you can do that. But
Well, I spoke to a lawyer, Mr. Cavada, that was there.
regular
paper.
contributor. Mhm.
And I told him I kind of disagreed with your model because you always, you know, you had a view,
Uh-huh.
like Fox has a view, or now CNN has a view.
Right.
You didn't, and you had a view, but you did, a lot of times didn't. I think have the opposing side. Mr. Cavada, as I recall, and this is hearsay from my memory, Mr. Cavada says, well, that was discussed, but the establishment has so much power
Right.
and media influence that it was discussed. Why should we give them?
Right.
you know,
How much
that
how
platform?
much of the opposite side does the Colored Times put in? They basically represent the Chamber of Commerce and in you know in that group,
They do.
and the Chamber
they
of
benefit
Commerce
from those
is a very political organization. I mean, they support most right-wing causes and lobby right-wing causes against workers, especially against wage and labor standards, and all the things that the normal working guy depends on to get treated decent. And so, and the same with Channel 3, Channel 6, Channel 10. They all support the mainstream business. I mean, remember just a couple of years ago, they were saying what a great thing Schliederbahn was. They're always behind.
Yeah, and I've said it many times before, and I don't have a chip on my shoulder about it, but there's many independent small businessmen like myself in their own properties. I know one on Leopard Street, and boy, the city won't, and maybe you employ between whatever it is, 2 to 20
Right.
people. City, you think they would do something for you?
Right.
You think they're there to help you?
Exactly.
So, and there's no acknowledgement of the number of people we employ, which is
Right.
more, and we don't pollute, et cetera. No acknowledgement of
And we stated our editorial policy in our paper every month that said, we represent the voice of the working people in the city, and we approach subjects from that viewpoint, because the Caller Times has a viewpoint. Anybody who doesn't think they don't is a fool.
It might be more sophisticated.
Very pro-business.
Yeah, it might be more sophisticated then. It's not always, you can't always tell, for example, they wrote an editorial, I don't know if this is allergist or not, they just recently wrote an editorial about the Shoreline Boulevard, the modifications.
Yes.
And that, and basically insulted Joe McComb for not being in favor of those modifications. Joe McComb, our mayor, and I don't know who's behind that. If that's a alleged liberal cause, they say they're liberal. I don't know
I don't
if
think
they thought it was going to benefit that newspaper building of theirs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the position of the paper is that was decided a long time ago, back in 2008, that decision that the park was going to be joined to the Bayfront.
Well, it was by the voters. Right?
Yes, but the voters didn't know what they were voting for.
And I was just going to say, they're very astute in the city of Corpus Christi, and it's a fraud. It's like a fraud or a con.
Yes.
We'll put this on the ballot in an off year when nobody votes, right? We'll put this in when there's a lot of teachers or whoever's going to benefit from this, who's going to be voting, and they're pretty skilled at that.
Oh yeah. That's why we were real pleased to beat Destination Bayfront, because now the city is in $17 million this year in debt, and where would we have been if we'd have spent resources on that thing?
Here's what gets me, of course. Who's behind that? Well, the Corpus Christi Caller Times, because they basically endorse and support the same candidates that are responsible for that. And some of these men I like, personally maybe, Lloyd Neal, Joe McComb, Mark Scott. They have, a lot of them, 2 of them have this great political personality, very charming and warm, something that I don't have. But who's responsible? That didn't come up overnight.
Well, it's a series of decisions that are made through the years that have encouraged the city to expand way beyond where the size it should be geographically.
That's a serious issue.
So we support a huge city, almost the size of Chicago, in land area, that doesn't have enough residents to support the roads and the streets and the underground infrastructure we need. So,
and when I did run for mayor, they wanted to, in fact, annex London.
Yes, they still do. They still do.
Well,
the developers do.
The developers, because the communities are annexed pretty much in every city that I am aware of.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't really. Half the time, they don't get their streets. They don't get their sidewalks.
Right.
They don't get.
I was pleased that Joe, when the annexation came up, which is going to come up again this Tuesday, annexation came up. We studied it. I was on the committee. We studied it last year. The question the city asked was, should we have an annexation policy? Actual policy that says under what circumstances land should be annexed. And we said, certainly, we should have a policy.
The problem is, they have these policies and these plans they pay for an institute, they never follow.
Well, this is what
That's the
happened.
problem.
This is what happened. This was all local stakeholders, developers, and community interests. And we met with the planning staff over several meetings, and we decided that yes, number one, that they needed a policy. Number two, that the policy that developers should show that there's a cost benefit to annexing their property. In other words, the city shouldn't charge current taxpayers anymore or rate holders anymore in order to annex. Our taxes and rates shouldn't go up for infrastructure to annex extra land. That land had to support itself if it was annexed in tax base. And we thought those were reasonable things.
They are.
And we had a whole policy formatted, and then the developers all showed up at the last meeting and voted not to have a policy. Kill the whole thing. The staff went in front of the council and told them basically what happened, and that there was no consensus because of that. And the council directed the staff, you will form a policy, go back and put together a policy. We don't care that the developer said no. So it's coming up again Tuesday. Joe, in that meeting, Joe McCombs said, I don't think we can afford to annex anything because, at that time he was looking at the workshop, which they thought the deficit was going to be $9 million. It turned out to be $17 million, and it's projected for every year here on out unless we make a radical change.
Well, that's interesting because that was an issue that has come up through the years with me on the show, etc. You say council directed the staff. The council should be directing the staff, but unfortunately it's been basically the staff directing the city council.
No, but I'll tell you what's happened is basically in the past, the developers have gotten what they want. And
they're directing the council.
And
they direct the staff.
Yeah,
the staff directs the council.
They've had a huge impact on the council because they fund council elections basically.
Yes.
And so that's been an issue. So it was good that we had this deficit in a way in this making the council wake up. The other thing is a major issue with the developers and with the city at this point is the new flood parameters, FEMA flood parameters. If we can talk just a minute about Houston, of course, Houston got hit hard by Harvey, and they had tons of homes that were flooded that weren't in a flood zone on the map. And basically the maps were way out of date, and ours are too. Even the new FEMA maps, Houston decided that they were going to set the new building codes that had to be 2 feet above the 500-year floodplain. Now, the 500-year floodplain is much higher than the 100-year floodplain. In Corpus, our staff recommended 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain would be the level for new homes, and the developers want 0. They want to add to floodplain for 100 years.
You know what they want to do? They want to build them on flat farmland.
Yes.
On a flat
Yes.
slab, no build up,
Yes.
no nothing.
And consequently, if we went by the same standard as Houston, 2 feet above the 500-year floodplain, there would be nothing throughout whole of London area that would meet that code now.
What is the 500-year floodplain? Could you explain what that is?
Well, it's the level of a flood occurring once every the percentage of chances of a flood that high are once every 500 years. So it's about 0.2%. But the problem is that the maps are so out of date. We had 3 500-year floods in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. That's according to Mark Van Black from the city.
I I've read that. You know, I haven't
So
read
yeah, that is grossly inadequate to place to even go a foot above the 100-year establish a code a foot above the 100-year floodplain. It's grossly inadequate, and it sets us up for a future catastrophe.
And then when it happens, and they always say, "How could this have happened?"
Yes.
Somebody's got to, you know. And then of course,
Exactly.
And when it has been discussed, you know, one thing that I had mentioned in a post on Facebook, a political Facebook page that I do, is that since we're talking about the budget, I mean, I can't remember if it was done so much as it was before, but now we have this policy of ambitious politicians such as now Mayor McComb or Carolyn Vaughn or Mr. Pusley. They leave their positions, then they run for something else, and then these political insiders who are already there,
Right.
they could put in whoever they want.
Right.
Is that a problem you've seen long standing? And I made a joke. I said, they talk about voter fraud in Robstown,
Yeah.
which is a drop in the bucket when the voters' decisions are being circumvented when these people are doing this. Is that? I don't think that's as common. I haven't seen that as a problem anywhere else as much as it is here.
Well, I think the part of it is like whether it's logical to run an election to fill that spot. You know, we got just till November. It really should be appointed. There's probably not time for a special election and then run another election before November.
Maybe they should. I'm sorry.
They
Go
do.
ahead.
They do give the advantage of incumbency to
Right.
whoever they appoint.
Big advantage.
To leave it vacant, it means those people have no representation. So it's a perplexing thing, Mark. What the best way to go is.
Well, it's a problem when you talk about the paper and the media. They should kind of hold those politicians responsible, or they should be asked.
Yes.
You plan to serve out this term.
Yes.
You know, it's just kind of like last time in the mayoral race. They said, "Can you get along with? I don't know where. Could you get along with other people? Could you? I don't know where they came up with that. That was a past issue, probably because
McQueen, yes.
McQueen was there very shortly, and he couldn't do it. Well, the chances of coming up with another candidate like him, that's probably not going to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and that was part of the media's fault too.
Just they didn't do their homework.
They did, right?
Yeah.
They didn't do their homework. And he was going to run for Mr. McQueen. Wasn't he going to run for Congress or something?
Yeah, for senator, I think for a little bit, but
Yeah.
it was. I think he was just trying to raise money.
Yeah, I hate to, you know, it's kind of like me with the Blake Farenthold. I kind of think people go over the top when you're down and out or against the ropes, you know. I hate to, like the paper was really against Blake, and who put him in office?
They did. Yeah,
put him
they
in
were all
office.
for
They
him.
put him and they loved him, and then you're down, they start kicking you when you're down. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, you can stop now. Okay,
Right.
the guy said he's not going to run. Okay, stop. Okay, you know, because I've been there. You know.
Yeah,
I've
that's
been in that
right.
situation before. I want to change subjects now. So, catch and release for illegals, sanctuary cities, policy of border patrol and letting illegals come over, amnesty programs, giving illegals driver licenses, the border walls. Those are some of the issues that are affecting
Well,
us.
you know,
And
yeah.
where are we going at with all these programs, and why is it that why is the latest darling of the left the illegal immigrants? Why am I supposed to wake up and say, man, I want another amnesty program for illegals, and I want to bring more?
I think that's
what's
been.
going
I
on?
think that's been mischaracterized.
Dreamers.
It's interesting that we first of all, you know, we have to go back and admit that NAFTA caused most of these problems. It really did. You know, we doubled poverty in Mexico in 3 years following NAFTA. We jumped from
North American Free Trade Agreement,
yes.
right? And that was passed under the Clinton
1996
administration, right?
by Clinton, right? And we the number of illegals living in the United States went from 2.3 million to 11 million in 4 years. because there was, we created so much poverty in Mexico and desperation. We didn't hire men in auto plants and maquiladoras. We hired women. We wouldn't hire men. So they were forced to join the cartels or immigrate. And, and then we fueled the cartel wars. 70% of the weapons used in crime in Mexico come from America. So, these
one
problems.
One of the last few industries seems to be the manufacture of guns and weaponry.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've created these problems, Mark. And the second thing is, if we wanted to fix the problem, we have it at our fingertips right now, which is called E-Verify, and you can verify any identity or any Social Security number. It should be mandatory. It's voluntary. Guess who's mostly against it? Republicans. The Republican business people do not want a legal Mexican immigrant, because this is simple. If a person has a green card, and they have a legitimate reason to be here, they have to pay them and treat them like other workers. If they're illegal, they can exploit them, they can underpay them, they can fire them, they can call ICE when they're not, misbehaving the way they want. If they don't want to pay them the last paycheck, they call ICE and have them picked up. I mean, this is every advantage. Who do we pick on? We pick on the immigrant. We don't pick on the employer, who is Swift and Company, for example, who hires hundreds and hundreds of illegals, advertises in Mexico, hey, come on into the United States, we'll pay a sign-on bonus if we get there. I mean, there's no better encouragement to get illegal.
Because I had done the Reagan amnesty program back
Yes.
in the 80s when I first started practicing, that was part of the law that was passed to get that amnesty product in. The employers were supposed to be checking the legal status.
But it was voluntary.
Well, okay, I'm not an expert on it, but as
Yeah.
I recall, what happened was they started to enforce it, and then they said, "Oh well, legally we can't enforce it for some ridiculous legal
Well, the
reason."
employers hated it.
Yeah.
They didn't want it.
So basically, they sold that amnesty program on that pretext, and you're absolutely right. All they have to do is enforce it to employers.
That's right, because
It'd be very simple.
people go home on their own if they couldn't
Oh, yeah,
get a
absolutely.
job.
Absolutely. But I did want to say something about, I have had experience with illegals in New York, for example, that acted personally very rude to me because they were charged with crimes, and in a very arrogant manner, as if they had no fear. They made a scene in my office. I had to call the police.
Right.
As if they had no fear of being arrested, as if they had all the rights of being U.S. citizens. They would go into the federal courthouse like, hey, we have nothing to be afraid of. So I would say that some people did seem to act as if there was no downside with being illegal, based on my personal experience.
I don't have any problem with deporting somebody who has committed an illegal act, but crossing the border by itself does not make somebody necessarily subject to every part of the law.
Well, what are you saying? I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is they then get a hearing and so on and so forth. They have due process.
Let me say something that nobody's going to say, because nobody's an insider in this niche that
Right.
like I am. So, girls coming across the border, she's a passenger. There's 3 illegals in the vehicle, right? Girl's never had a criminal record. American citizen. She will get federal prison time. Almost definitely, if there's 3. What are the illegals? They send the illegals back. The illegal gets no time.
Right.
The American citizen who's making, they get time in prison. Is that right?
Well, probably if they're knowingly transporting,
Well, they are I'm saying she's knowingly doing it.
Yeah.
She's knowingly committing a crime. But what are the illegals? I mean, it seems to me that they're not being punished equitably as our American citizens.
Well, I'm not, as an American taxpayer, willing to pay to keep them for 2 or 3 years while they
Well,
hang around
maybe
just
less
kick
of
them
them,
back.
less of them may come over if they think it's a crime, wouldn't they? I mean, if they think, hey, it's
I-
a joke. Look, it's
I-
like the lottery. I get to go over. If I get to stay, I get amnesty. If I don't, they send me back. What's the big downside?
I
May
think
as well give it a shot.
I think that where we fail, Mark, is when somebody comes over, is to deport them right away. You know.
Well, let me say something. I know I have some insider knowledge on this,
Mm-hmm.
and again, don't think I'm necessarily. Sometimes I go back and forth.
Right.
I don't think like.
But again, remove the incentive.
Well, look.
You
okay,
know,
okay,
remove
look,
the
look.
incentive.
You know what they're told on the border? Because I know this, because
Yeah.
a secretary of mine, I have an office in Harlingen,
Mm-hmm.
and a secretary of mine has a brother who's on the border patrol. You see an illegal coming over, you can't say,
Mm-hmm.
stop or I'll shoot.
Uh-huh.
You can't hit him with a beanbag.
Right.
You can't. You got to let him come over. Well, and that's the conservative view
I know.
too.
Yes.
And it's not very tolerant. But there's truth in it probably.
But again, remove the incentive. Nobody's going to come if there's no incentive.
Well, they don't. Well,
If
I
we,
do know.
if we create a legal pathway for people to come here and work when we need workers, and they're, why not? Why wouldn't it do that?
Well, what's wrong
You-
with? Okay, but Trump's got some. Why we got an immigration policy, and he's saying I want to enforce it. Now I don't agree with all. Obviously, that's what's out there, but. Enforce it. And they're, he's so bad. He's so evil.
Well-
He must enforce. What's the big deal? Look, do you think I went to bed at night and said, man, I really feel for all these illegals coming over here.
No.
That's not upper mind in my mind.
Do you think number one, do you think that is an adequate, appropriate use of a resource? There's competing for lots of competition for resources in the United States, for funding and so on and so forth. And here you have the lowest illegal immigration rate since 1971, and he's going to go throw a bunch of people at the border to satisfy his base. He's trying to shore up his support with his base. He does not care. He's trying to hang on to that 41% of people like him no matter what.
I think he believes it.
Well,
I think
it's
he
possible.
No,
You saw it on Fox News.
Well, he was a Democrat. He was a Democrat.
I
A lot
don't-
of it, and,
I don't
he
think
did
it-
kind of reform the Republican Party. Many of the ideas you remember how the animosity and hatred of Trump when he was running. It's a miracle he got in by the Romney.
I think.
Did you ever hear another speech like Romney gave against Trump?
Well, he's right. He was right. I think that the thing fundamentally you have to understand about Donald Trump is that he has a narcissistic personality disorder.
Well,
There is no doubt about it. He is easily. I just spent 30 years in the field. There is no doubt. He is the example. He is the living example of narcissistic personality disorder. And because he has not had to pay consequences for most of his behavior, he is really dangerous in this role.
But I told you before the show when we exchanged some text messages, and this again would go for Blake Farenthold or for Donald Trump. I would prefer to stick to his platform and his policies.
Yeah, but I think it
rather than
shows
his
in his
personalities.
but it
and
shows.
I do think, I'm sorry, sir.
I think it's reflected in his policies.
Well, that's an argument.
Because
That's an argument.
because
Look, I-
his ties to his base are the most important thing to him. He wants to be able to go to a campaign type rally and have them adore him. Everything he says, he depends on it. That's his link to his justification for anything he wants to do. Look at people who disagree with him. They don't stay in the White House. No, he has had tons of turnover.
Well, but a friend of mine who's a small businessman like myself, we did comment on that. We said, who could run your business like that? Now, if he ran his business enterprise like that, he'd be out of business.
Yes.
So I don't know if he thinks this is. I don't know. That I don't understand. Is this a joke or?
Well,
or it's not his money. It's government money, so he doesn't care. I don't know.
I think understand something. Donald Trump is operating now. He has some enough confidence in himself. He is operating by instinct. His instinct bankrupted him as a businessman 6 times. And that's what he is, you know, he doesn't have a successful track record. His track record is based on the amount of money he can borrow.
Okay, so I think I'd rather not talk too much about that. So Trump did come out with a memo saying that he wants to end catch and release, which is an issue wherein you would catch illegals and you would release them, and then obviously often they wouldn't show up in court. So he went into that. So you think that's a bad idea?
I think that he favors building a huge private prison system. A lot of people make a lot of money off of, and that's what we feel.
Yeah, nothing that's ever talked about regarding that privatization issue, which I was for some amount of years. The big problem with privatization of prisons and other things is the amount of corruption.
Yes, it's huge.
It's tremendous corruption. They're paying off these politicians, these lobbyists, etc. I mean, it's just terrible, right?
Right, and they're working prisoners in for-profit, benefiting for profit off prisoners' work.
I understand the Coastal Bend Detention Facility over there in Robstown was supposed to be closed up, but then I don't know, it's still open.
I don't know about the local
Okay.
situation.
So then what do you think about sanctuary cities? Do you think that it was right, Trump suing the state of California because you have too many sanctuary cities? What do you think about that?
Again, I think it's mostly, I don't think it's as big as an issue as he'd like to make it out to be. He's diverting resources to deal with an imaginary problem. He does this repeatedly. He tells lies to his base. They believe him. He passes laws or tries to set up policy
So he doesn't care about the illegal problem. You think it's just a political move. He seemed not that political to me.
I think so. I mean,
you think that's a political move. We don't have we don't have a social problem in the United States with illegals coming over, and if we don't do anything, it's not going to be a worse problem.
Mark, he's looking at how that he figures that he partially won the election by making that argument, even though it was declining, illegal immigration was declining. He's went back to that because he's under pressure. It's obvious at this point. Two or three things are pretty obvious. One is that Donald Trump's finances are very much hooked up with the Russians in terms of some of his investments. Two, that there is something like 57 or 58 contacts between members of his staff and the Russians. That doesn't happen by chance, okay? And there's probably guilty of working to steer the election. The third thing is obviously is obstruction of justice. That's the third path. That is, and then there's the emoluments, which is a whole nother arm of the investigation of him refusing to give up control of his assets and continue to profit from the presidency.
I think the Russian issue started in the debate wherein Hillary Clinton's emails were discovered and released by WikiLeaks, and the first thing she said was, that was Russian. And I think that she, in fact, as a Goldwater girl, basically caused this problem as and it's linked with her conservatism. Personally, I don't feel that there is a real Russian issue. I think that the left has turned against Russia in particular because they have embraced religion again, orthodoxy. Not many years ago, when the Russians didn't have a state religion and suppressed religions, the left loved them. Now, I haven't heard anybody discuss what I'm saying. Is it true?
I don't think so. First of all, I don't think I'm not sure the left ever loved Russia.
I don't think it.
No, I think that
Let me tell you something.
there's a
I didn't have a problem with Russia in the 70s, under the 80s, under Reagan. I don't have a problem with Russia now. So I think that this ain't they want to get us in another war. We don't have another war fronts.
Let me go back a little bit. There was I think all agree that there was a Russian Cold War, and the fight was between liberal democracy and oppressive Russian-style government. Now you can call it socialism, but what was in Russia was not socialism.
Totalitarianism?
Yes, that was totalitarianism. And so when the Soviet Union broke up, and Gorbachev was in power, and he was succeeded by Yeltsin, we supported Yeltsin because Gorbachev wanted to keep the socialist framework in Russia, make the transition easier and softer. The United States, under Reagan, wanted a shock therapy. They wanted shock capitalism, and they got it. And because of that, people like Putin came to power and stole control of most of the state assets. The Russian oligarchs are basically former KGB and other people in the government that robbed the Russian people at the breakup of the Soviet Union and put themselves in power. Now they're just as oppressive as the old government. Now one of the things that came out this morning was that there is indication that the stuff on the dark web, they said there was 32,000 Clinton emails were available on the dark web. And there was a conspiracy theorist who's a supporter of Trump who's trying to walk this idea around, try to sell it to the FBI and the CIA, a former government official. And they looked at it and said, this stuff is fake. It's obviously fake. Now, they dangled that 32,000 email possibility in front of a bunch of different Trump people, obviously trying to entice them into engaging with them. And they did. There were several attempts, including by Papadopoulos, Donald Jr., the Trump Tower meeting. All of them were after that bait, okay? Now, they wanted to obtain something that had been obtained supposedly illegally, which is actually fake. Now, there was numerous documented examples of the campaign officials from the Trump campaign actively working with the Russians to try to get information out of them. I think that's pretty clear.
I would say that Hillary Clinton did not say in that first debate that those emails were fake. She just said the Russians released them.
Well,
I don't know if they're fake or not.
There's two set. Understand, there's different emails. There is the WikiLeaks emails, which weren't that damning, really.
They weren't that.
No, they didn't have it really a thing in. And there was supposedly this other trove of 32,000 emails that was on the dark web.
I think the first trove, though, did indicate that, in fact, am I wrong or right? That's when it was revealed how Hillary Clinton took over the Democratic Party, basically, and kind of treated Sanders in a much fair way.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
You know, and I've never talked about that before, but that was shameful because many of us thought that Sanders was a much better.
Yes, and
probably
would have won the election.
I thought that.
Yeah, he won the primaries in the state she lost.
Yeah, I thought that because
Wisconsin, Michigan.
He had a cogent platform that was a more traditional Democratic working person platform than did Hillary Clinton.
Bill Clinton moved the Democrats way to the right, and it's often said that Bill Clinton was the best Republican president we've had in quite a few years, and I would agree with that.
What's interesting is whether it's President Obama, who I think of as a Republican president, or President Clinton.
Yes, he was a centrist. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I mean, neither one of them really, I don't think, addressed the traditional Democratic principles, either Clinton or Obama.
Right.
And here we are, but it doesn't seem to make any difference because they were viciously attacked from day one.
Oh yeah. Well,
And I would say this for Trump, who, even though some people are astounded by this, I voted for Trump. I say I'm glad the Democrats attacked him from day one because finally, turnabout is fair play.
yeah.
They did it to Clinton. And it was terrible the way they did it to Obama.
Yes,
and I
they
voted
did.
for Obama twice.
It's primarily because he's
So
black.
if you want to set it up, if the Republicans wanted to set it up like that, then every time somebody gets in, a president, just go on all-out
Right.
attack.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. That's what they've done. That's
That's the way. If that's the way that we want to run things. Okay.
you know,
Okay.
it's like, you know, the whole right is changed because people like Rush Limbaugh and stuff like that, Hannity, they refer to liberals as some kind of illegitimate force within the country, which they're a legitimate political position. They dehumanize them. They do everything but say, "Hey, kill a liberal, you'll be all right." You know, I mean, the things that are said about liberals being inherently stupid and so on and so forth is really bad. It's really bad.
It is bad, and it seems to be an integrated brainwashing
Yes.
process. I had a man remark something to me about being a lawyer on Twitter, and he's standing there putting down lawyers. He's standing there with a gun in front of a dead bear. So will you just take that gun and you attack lawyers, and you think that gun is something about your rights, and you think that's your only right? Said, and here you're attacking lawyers who protects your rights, and you think the only important part of the Bill of Rights is whatever in the Constitution is your gun. Let me tell you something.
Right.
They'll drop a bomb on your house like nobody's business.
Yes, that's right.
And if you think
That's
that gun is your only right in the United States, and you think that's respecting your rights, and it's not due process, it's not a lawyer, you are very deluded.
Yes.
But they apparently have been brainwashed to believe that.
Yeah, a lot of people have. The ignorance about the Constitution and how our government works is astounding.
It's so astounding. You know, I actually went through one of the local judges passes out a Constitution, right? Constitution. So I'm looking at the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution. They set up the executive, the legislative, and the legislative branch, and they set up the judicial branch,
Right.
the Supreme Court, and then they mention writ of habeas corpus,
Right.
kind of vaguely defined, right? That's all there is. Then they come out with the Bill of Rights.
Right.
All your rights, when they talk about the Constitution, that stuff's all in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, that's all added
And
later.
they could drop that.
Yes.
They could override. That's nothing. Hell, they've done it regarding
Right.
right?
Well, they've
I mean,
changed.
they
yeah,
changed it.
liquor laws.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
added to it.
Yeah. So people think, oh, the Constitution. What are you talking about? Because
Yeah.
the Bill of Rights is. I think that does require. Is it 2/3?
Yes.
A 2/3. I don't think that would be that hard to do.
But look at, you know, Mark. What is there? 27
I think
amendments.
That might be correct. I don't know.
It's like 21 or 27 amendments. Anyway, I think there's 27 amendments because I think the 25th is about removal of the president in, you know, under duress or
I
something.
only research usually what I need.
Yeah, right.
But I need,
Well, at least we got further than Trump, which is that after the fourth page, he got bored and didn't want to see her anymore. But the yeah, so the first 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights. The rest of all have been changes since then. So 17 times the Constitution has been changed.
Yeah. So when we hear about the Constitution as if it was this carved in stone like the Ten Commandments of
Right.
Moses, simply not true.
Well, and the other thing is there's a comparison between the Second Amendment right and the right to own a semi-automatic weapon, and that's not there. There is no Second Amendment right to own an assault rifle or a semi-automatic weapon. Even Justice Scalia, who wrote the Heller decision, which gave individuals the right to own a weapon, said that the government could restrict the type of weapon that a person owns. They do not have access to necessarily military type weapons.
I made a joke. I said, "Hey, I want a nuclear bomb."
Yeah.
I mean, where's this going?
Right. Exactly.
You know, and are you a big gun enthusiast on that?
No, but I've been hunter all my life
Oh,
and a
that's
gun
interesting.
gunner all my life.
Mhm.
And I'm not afraid of weapons. I mean, as far as a weapon, having a weapon in a home, but you know,
So
there's
where do you think the restriction should be?
I think the military style semi-automatic weapon with a large capacity magazine should be illegal.
And they
For
were
a
for a
civil,
while.
yes, they were.
They were.
And I would.
And then if you come out and say that, you're attacked and
I know.
un-American, and it's unbelievable.
And I would include a semi-automatic pistols with large capacity magazines, like 10 or 15 shot Glocks. You know, those are the weapons that are most often used
Yeah.
in mass murders.
I'm not going to. Right. I don't always feel I'm not going to give my opinion on some of that, but I do
Yeah.
think that reasonable restriction is
Yeah, there's nothing that I would want to do with a gun that would be prevented by that. You know, hunting certainly wouldn't be affected by it. Defending myself in my home, I'd rather have my shotgun than than a pistol or a automatic weapon. What are you going to do? Sleep with it under your pillow? Come on.
Well, I'm a licensed handgun owner, but I would have preferred to have been in an occupation that wasn't required.
Yes.
Or that wasn't maybe wise.
Right.
I really didn't know that I'd have to be something out of a John Wayne movie as an attorney. But
Right.
unfortunately, and sometimes those threats come from
Sometimes
the
they are,
rebels.
yes.
They come,
Yeah.
They don't come necessarily from my clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a case where people don't like you representing them. At any rate, John, we were talking about the legal issues, and we were talking. What about this terrorist issue? I made a joke.
Oh,
about
wow.
the terrorist issue. I made a joke about going. I got to go over to Harbor Freight and buy myself 10 machetes before this tariff thing kicks in, because all that cheap Chinese, all those cheap Chinese tools. Which, by the way, you and I are maybe close to the same age. I think we are. Do you remember when tools and all that stuff was so expensive?
Oh yeah,
you
very
could
much
hardly
so.
buy it.
Oh yeah, it was just a fortune. You
Oh
know.
yeah, now
Yeah.
you could have that stuff. You could. Have
I have
that
a whole
stuff
shop now.
Right, but it used to be. So that was nobody talks about that, but that has been a good
Yes, it has.
effect.
The thing is, Mark, when we made these trade agreements, a lot of them were not made appropriately because
That's what Trump says.
they didn't. Yes, I would agree, but the reasons are wrong. That what they should have said is, hey, you got to meet the same environmental standards, you got to meet the same equivalent to American workers. You know, you got to play in a level playing field if you're going to, trade for your trade. And they didn't do that. And Clinton definitely undermined American manufacturing. But AI, automation have been just as big a factors. And the other thing is that now we were so deeply entrenched in a world parts. What do I want to say? Parts are made all over the world and then
Right.
assembled in one place.
That's right.
We can't break that supply chain that easily, and what we need to do now is adjust it rather than the first thing you don't do is you don't go say, well, I'm going to put a tariff on this and stuff and so. Then we'll negotiate. Come on, you sit down and you say, hey, let's get this straightened out. And we have the power to do that. This is, again, strictly for Trump's base, to keep that short up, that 41% that he's got, that he has to depend on. If he loses that, he's all done. He knows he's got to keep the support of the people, of his people, to put pressure on the Republican Party. Keep the Republican Party threatened by people coming at him from the right. And the other thing is that the Republicans made this mess for themselves. Unlimited campaign spending, these are all Karl Rove tactics, to make a permanent Republican majority. Extreme gerrymandering, All those things were meant to corrupt democracy in its workable form. And what we're fighting for really is a fight for what if we're gonna be liberal democracies or we're gonna be illiberal democracies.
Well, I don't know. Again, kind of defending Trump in a way. I was under the impression that he came up with a cogent platform that was outside of the Republican norm. He didn't really campaign on, I'm going to cut taxes for the rich. Then when he did it, I was very disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there is an issue regarding, you and I are the same age. Do you remember when we basically thought that the world would be better off if we didn't have separate governments, one world government? And I think what we've learned to find out is, in many respects, it's far worse than the autonomous sovereign nation concepts.
Well, I think there's a middle ground. I don't think we were looking for one world government. I don't ever think we were looking for that. But we are looking for ways to address global challenges. Climate change has huge effects. We pollute here. Somebody in Africa starves, because of the changes in the climate.
You do understand, of course, that the Republicans, they don't state it very, very well, but they're of the belief that the climate change issue is basically kind of a socialistic takeover of the world to control the amount that the capitalist societies produce and and whatever that all the societies produce, and in that way everything could be controlled and manipulated by a different kind of whatever world agency. Is that true?
I think they understand that's their way they view it. But at the same time, I would point out that we now have 7.5 billion people on Earth. If you take this room.
You and I have discussed about this before, which
yes.
I do disagree with you on. But go ahead.
We can't keep with the climate changes that we're producing. Mm-hmm. We'll continue to diminish our ability to produce food supply.
That one car probably pollutes more than 100 people.
Absolutely.
So maybe we should talk about getting rid of the cars before we talk about getting rid of the people.
But every one of those people thinks you ought to have a car.
We've talked about it before. There's conspiracies to popularize the cars in the United States.
Yes.
There was destructions of
street cars,
yes. etc. in order to get the cars popularized.
Yes. Mass transit needs to be much stronger in the States than it is. It's much stronger in other countries. We're wedded to our cars. Our cities are built around cars. That's why we're $17 million in the hole in the Corpus Christi, because we have a city that's built for cars, not for people.
That's very true. There's been some, and I think that's where in this whole shoreline development and buildings, apartments downtown, etc. Mm-hmm. That there is a social whatever. There's a political group for that in Corpus Christi.
There's a lot of demand for that. The problem we have here, we've talked about this before too, is that many of the builders here have worked on the city codes and to the extent and shaped them so that they favor their business model, which is basically you can build an apartment building, you can build a commercial building, or you can build a subdivision. There's nothing else in between. So the ability to build duplexes and triplexes, townhouses, integrated neighborhoods with different types of small businesses and housing is extremely limited in this town. And that's what brings density. We only have 1,900 people per square mile. Chicago has 13,000. So you figure out the difference in supporting the infrastructure.
Maybe that's our upside. Our upside is the future because we do have that amount of land, and that's the other side argument.
But our costs are so high that people are not moving into Corpus; they're moving to Portland and other places.
You know, you were talking about regulation and how many, and you know, I'm sure you could speak even in bigger detail how many of these laws have been passed and regulations to benefit the developers. I must say that it's with some degree of disappointment the way that I see some of these buildings going up in the downtown area and how shabby they look and how they're built right on the street. And I said, well, you know, and I can't believe that we don't appear to even have decent, any kind of decent regulation regarding the buildings. Well, I mean, the Cosmopolitan looks like a big shack to me.
I think the Cosmopolitan is basically the same footprint as Liechtenstein's was.
Well, it's not the quality of building. It doesn't appear to be, even though I'm not an expert, and this is just kind of an opinion. I mean, it doesn't look like the quality of building. We've got a big shack, and you know, and it looks to me like half the apartments in Corpus Christi should be, and talked about population density and ugly with their parking lots and the density, that I can't believe they're even allowed to be built.
Well,
they look all like future ghettos to me.
There's a lot of that. Again, it's favored apartment buildings, big apartment buildings and complexes, suburbs, suburban homes, that, you know, and commercial. That's it, and it favors those people. So
well, that I would definitely agree. Agree. And I think, as a matter of fact, they encourage the decimation of whatever. You buy a house on the near south side, they develop further
Right.
south side, and they abandon your neighborhood.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And right, and whether that's in the inner city, whether it's this
Yes.
property that you're on Elizabeth Street that you're in,
Right.
that they'll decimate this area, and then they'll go further. You know,
They keep, yes, and the way they have the zoning set up prevents from getting rebuilt and redeveloped.
Well, hell, you can't even, if you could find someone to even work, because, well, it's kind of a machine. I won't get into it more.
Right.
It's very difficult to even, I believe you own a home, and you probably are very well aware of how difficult it is even to keep your own property up, hiring someone to do it.
Yes.
You know, but so people are almost encouraged to go to the side, you know.
Yes.
You know, so that's one of the issues. So, we have any elections coming up? Anybody you're supporting, or anything you want to talk about regarding upcoming elections? Or I know Mr. Pusley is running for the county county judge.
I'm
he's running
hoping
against
Barbara Canales.
and
I very much support Barbara Canales. You know. Pusley has been a tool of industry here forever, and he favors the port industries over the citizens, and has consistently since he's been in office. And that is not. Why are we running a $17 million deficit when the Port of Corpus Christi is shipping 4 or 5 times what a product out of there that they did 10 years ago, 5 years ago?
And again, these establishment.
Why is it happening?
These establishment politicians like Mr. Pusley, where's their responsibility for these deficits, for these problems?
That's right.
Even Mayor McComb. Oh, okay. Well, we got this, Mr. McComb. You've been in politics almost your whole life.
That's right.
Where's your responsibility? Who's holding,
That's
your
right.
feet to the fire? Are we? I invited Barbara Canales to come on the show. I don't know that Mr. Pusley is getting such promotion from a local talk show host in the morning that I thought, well, I don't even know if it's fair to have him on. But obviously, if Barbara Canales did agree to come on,
Sure.
I would have her on.
I think you should have both of them on.
And we try to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the fair thing to do. Plus, then if they get in, especially if it's a judge, you got to cover them both. And then let's see. There's also an election coming up. It's basically the Democrat is for one of the judgeships. It's going to be basically Bill Kelly.
Yes.
Versus
No relation.
No relation.
No relation.
Very common Irish name.
Yeah. Spells it different.
That's Bill Kelly versus
Carlos Valdez.
Carlos Valdez. Who are you picking on that one? Who's your dark horse?
Bill Kelly. Bill Kelly's I'm a Democrat basically, but I'm going to vote for him. He's a Republican. Carlos, I can't support Carlos after what he did to the city and the county. He left the county when he had a big a case on his desk. It was a white collar case for the port commissioner, and he took the job with the city the day after he got it put on his desk for $125,000 more. He had a pension from the county for $125,000, doubled his salary overnight, and went to work for one of the litigants in the case.
What litigant did he go to work
The city. The city appointed the port commissioner.
You know, I thought Carlos Valdez was ahead of his time. In many respects, I thought he was a decent county attorney and district attorney, but I did have fundamental differences after he left the district attorney's office. He's been in politics his whole life. And,
Don't stand between him and the microphone.
and he, look, he's been in politics his whole life, and I understand why, you know, maybe I'm probably going to have him on because Mr. Kelly was on recently to kind of balance things out. John,
I would say this about Carlos: he never discovered a white collar crime in his whole history.
and Carlos has came out and said when he was district attorney, he said that should be enforced civilly. In other words, through a lawsuit and not criminally. That's his opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know that
I
agree
don't
with
think
that either.
the Court of Constitution or Supreme Court does agree with
Thank you
it.
very much, John Kelly.
Thank you.
John
As
Henry
always.
was a little baby
Thank you.
sitting on his papa's knee. And he picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel. Cried, a hammer's gonna be the death of me, Lord, Lord. Hammer's gonna be the death of me. Cried, a hammer's gonna be the death of me. Hammer's gonna be the death of me.